Good evening, members. Thank you for being here. I know it's only because of the aircon, but let's enjoy it while we can, drag out the meeting. Item 1, apologies for absence and substitutions. I have received apologies from Councillors Perry and Portfolio Holder Councillor James. Councillor Joe Slimming is substituting for Councillor Bowes. Thank you for that. Are there any other apologies for absence or substitutions? No, okay. Any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay. Are there any urgent matters? No. This is great, speeding through. Minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of June. Does the committee agree that the minutes of the meeting held on the 15th of June 2026 are an accurate record? Yep. Okay, agreed. I'll sign those at the end. Which moves us straight on to the meat of the meeting. Emma, would you like to... Oh, you forgot the fire. Oh, I did. I forgot the fire bit. Sorry. It's a good job there wasn't one in the last 2 minutes. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarm sounds, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exit is located at the rear of this room. Go down the stairs unless otherwise instructed and meet in War Memorial Park. Members, please note that this meeting is being webcast live on the internet. So please switch your mobile phones to off or to silent, and don't forget to read out the fire evacuation procedures. And can I please remind members and officers that in order to be heard clearly by those present and on the webcast, you must speak directly into the microphone. And that's that done. And now, Emma, would you like to introduce the new Hackney Carriage tariff report?
Good evening. So for some of you, you're new to licensing, so I'm going to give you a quick whistle-stop tour of taxi licensing. We talk a lot about the taxi policy and the taxi trade, and the very basic principle you need to know as the licensing authority is there's no such thing as a taxi. They don't exist. They're a media construction. So the trade is made up of two elements. We have our private hire element and our Hackney carriage element, which are very different. Within private hire, these are private enterprises and businesses, so you'll see Alpha, Delta, Uber, those sort of people, they're all private hire. And they need 3 licenses. They need an operator's license, and an operator can operate multiple vehicles and drivers. They need a driver's license, and they need a vehicle license, all of which have to be issued by the same authority. They have to be pre-booked, and all of ours have no booking, no rides stickers on the side, and you agree the fare with them. They set their own fares and charges, and as long as they agree it with the customer, that is a verbal contract with them. That's private hire. We legislate them. Then we have Hackney carriages. We regulate Hackney carriages. We have complete control over their income and their trade. We set their tariffs and dictate what they can and cannot earn. It is a very different beast. We make sure that all of our Hackney carriages within Basingstoke are wheelchair accessible to some degree, and that means they're very expensive vehicles. They're expensive to run. We've provided grants, so some have moved over to electric vehicles, but we also still have a large number of diesel vehicles that are Hackney carriages. But they can't charge whatever they like a private hire. They aren't pre-booked generally. They can be, and they can be sub-booked through a private hire, but generally they pick up at the rank and grab the next person from the station who comes to the top of the rank and take them. And the tariffs are what we set. So we have the power to allow a tariff increase or deny a tariff increase, but we need to carefully balance out. Private hire and Hackney carriages are a vital part of our transport network within Basingstoke. They provide different services for the two different types of taxis that aren't taxis, and we need to support them, but we also need to support the general public, which makes it quite a balancing act when we look at fares. So since the last increase in January 2025, there has been an increase in insurance premiums for the type of vehicles that we use for Hackney carriages. There's also been an increase, which is shown in the papers, in diesel and petrol, which is levelling out now, but the other cost of service and running these vehicles has still increased and hasn't gone down. So the trade have asked if we can add 30p to the drop. The drop is when you sit your bum in the seat. That is the drop. As soon as you get in the car, that initial value is what is charged just for you sitting in the car before you go anywhere. We are currently 69 on the 2 mile tariff, which is at the back of this paper, which is the national standard. It's done at 2 miles to work out where we sit. We are in one of the most expensive areas in the country, and even this change would only move us up to 55. So we don't even move that far up the tariff. I forgot what the recommendation is. So the recommendation on this paper is for you to consider the new fare table with the 30p extension to the drop, for it to go out for consultation for a minimum period of 14 days in accordance with section 65 of the Local Miscellaneous Governments Act. I also want to make you aware, even though it is called a consultation, it's not a consultation in the same way that we do for policies, because it's set specifically, which is why it's 14 days within the legislation.
Thank you very much. Questions, comments? Sorry, Paul.
So the last increase was January 2025, but was that, according to this paper, approved by Cabinet and implemented? Was that the same process now, or is that a slightly different process to what was implemented back in January 2025?
Okay, so Cabinet are the only people within the authority who have the final power to make the decision whether we adopt the new tariff or not. But previously it was brought in 2024 to Licensing Committee for them to review. It then went out for the consultation, and it then went to Cabinet after that for them to review there weren't any representations made during the consultation, and they approved the tariff change.
So we are going through the same process again now?
Yes, exactly the same process.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Disdain.
I think the recommendation is just to stick with this increase on the 30p on the base drop, as you say. I think, if I recall, we've done this before in the past, and I think it was something to do with the challenge around metering. But what I'm concerned about is the disparity where a lot of those short fares, particularly the fact we've got the wheelchair accessible vehicles, are going to be disproportionately hitting those who are disabled or the elderly who will be doing the short trips. And I just wondered what the rationale is behind not actually exploring doing a split between a slight fare increase and a lower base increase, so the drivers don't end up being penalised, but also it is a bit fairer on the spread, because I think the 30 pence works out like a 7.1% increase, which is obviously above inflation. And as you go, obviously, as you do more mileage, it drops down. And as you said, just looking at the appendix, where we are quite, as you say, quite high up on the costs already. So obviously, we've got a duty to residents to make sure that we're not penalising them. So, can we look at these other options? Because I think if it's just about the machines and things, that's not necessarily the right approach, because we need to make sure we're being fair and equal. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I completely understand what you're saying about looking at the other options and different bits and pieces. Unfortunately, you can put those comments in during the consultation, but this committee doesn't have the power to amend the what has been proposed by the trade. So the amendments come during the consultation period if people come back and say, and I completely understand, one of the points that was raised, not last time, but when we did this a few years ago, was that also our Hackney carriage drivers are part of our community who have the same cost of living impacts as the people that they take around, which is why I said at the beginning it's a complete balancing act. I do completely agree that we should have a much wider look, but I would have thought that we'd be much better off doing that when we merge all three authorities through LGR, and then we make it the same playing field across the whole of North Hampshire, which obviously 18 months away seems a long time, but it will come round in the blink of an eye.
So we've had the consultation, I take it then?
Yes, it legally has to go out for consultation, and obviously all of the councillors will be included in that consultation email.
Sorry, say it, order again. Okay, Councillor Bound, Councillor Ganesh, then Councillor Chatburn, and then Councillor Davies.
Thank you. I think it's sort of been answered already. 4.11 on page 13, that's the very bottom paragraph. It says, given these factors, the approach is not considered the most appropriate at this time. So when would it be appropriate, and what criteria will be used in reaching a decision to apply such changes?
So I'm guessing you're talking about a more holistic view at the fair tariffs, and yeah. And again, so when we merge together, there's different tariffs across the three authorities at the minute. They're all very different and they're all designed very differently. There is some national guidance that we all follow, but it will have to be agreed the way forward with the licensing committee in place at that time, how we are going to progress this so it is equally split and to make sure that there is no negative impact on income for the drivers, and also supports the local people across what will be North Hampshire. And it's looking at the factors of the costs of the vehicle, the cost of the insurance, the cost of the maintenance, the cost of the petrol, electric or diesel, depending what they have, and working out a method between us internally that we can best provide that, and that will then come to a paper to the committee before it then comes as a tariff.
Councillor Ganesh?
I think I'm all up for looking after our trade and make sure that they're all treated fairly during this inflation and cost of living crisis. But the concerns I have is the one is around, we are already 69 out of the 341 authorities, which is about 20%, top 20%. And putting us another 30p on top will put us on top 15, which may not be a good look, because while we consider looking after our trade, and of course the Hackney carriage drivers are our community, but we'll be disadvantaging a lot of families, like families who send their kids on a regular taxis or on a daily basis, will be disproportionately impacted through this, because 30p on top, I'm happy with looking after our trade, but especially our inflation had a CPI increase was only about 2.2%. All of a sudden, when we're going to have almost like 7% increase on this, it's not the proportionate increase by looking at it. And what we're going to expect is when we increase this by this percentage or this pence, all of a sudden, the private hire is going to put the price up. So there's a domino effect that's going to say, okay, Hackney carriages are charging 30p more, we're going to put up another 50p more. So this is the kind of a balance that I'm struggling to support this proposal, to be honest with you. I know it's going to go through the process, and we are only here to note the paper, but I don't know how much we could influence this. But 30p increase per 2 mile, putting us from 820 to 850, which will be it's not the appropriate, or maybe it's not the right time to look into it from my perspective. Maybe once we moved into a unitary authority, when we can kind of try to balance out with all three authorities, might be the right way approach. I don't know, but I'm happy to listen to the colleagues in the committee.
I think this is more an interim approach. I mean, I know we keep talking about LGR and it only being 18 months away, and that will really fly around, and all of these things do need to be ironed out during that time. One comment I had, you said about people regularly using, did you mean Hackney carriage or did you mean private hire? Because I do know that they are pre-booked by people, especially for hospital appointments and stuff, and they do that regularly as well. I was just making sure that you understood the difference between the two. Go for it.
So just to add on that point, it does put us at 55. I've just been Googling away. The average cost of diesel in Basingstoke is currently 167p a litre. The highest cost in the UK is Colchester at 167.9. We're above the South East average, which is amongst the highest in the UK. So although it looks like we're high, the fuel prices do reflect that as well. Just for a bit of clarity on that.
So I completely understand the costs, but the impact on our residents will be, they haven't got that 7% pay increase. They already have all other pressure on top. They probably may have had CPI increase of 2.2 or 3.5, some organizations 5. So no one had 7%. As far as I know, none of my friends had 7% pay increase in last year. So that's the kind of way I'm looking into it from a resident's perspective who use this regularly. Like Councillor Justin mentioned about the short drops for disabled people with the wheelchairs on a regular basis. Who are the people who's going to be impacted more than someone who would be coming out from a night out in London used once in a while? So this is the point I'm looking at it. So I feel it's something that we probably may have to wait for a bit longer, because we've just increased January 2025, whereas a lot of the other authorities hasn't increased since 2023 or 2024. So we have already looked after a little bit during the crisis, and we are already on top 20 percentile of the entire country among 341 authorities. There are almost like 280 authorities charge less than us. So that is probably what we should probably consider, in my perspective.
Just to make something clear a second, yes, we did increase in 2025. The previous increase to that was in 2022, and the previous increase before that was 10 years. So I do understand you saying that people haven't had a 7% pay increase, but if you divide the percentage increase across the years that they didn't have any increases at all, it kind of amounts to the same thing.
Councillor Chatburn. Okay, thank you. Councillor Davies.
Following on from the point about the disproportionate impact on residents with disabilities, is there anything that council can do to proactively engage with any kind of disability groups for just to let them know about the potential increase and give them kind of further support with any of that?
I'm part of the Access Forum, which engages the disabled people within the community. We've just had a meeting about WAB vehicles within the authority. They are aware that we are looking at the Hackney fees and charges, but we also regularly provide them with other operators they can use that aren't taxis, that are charities, that can also provide them with these services at different cost rates because they are private companies. So we do try and make sure that all of our disabled residents have options.
Jackie and then Sejish.
Yeah, I did ask earlier as well about obviously there were different options put down on this and why it was chosen to go with the fixed one, which obviously then creates this imbalance on the shorter journeys. And obviously from what Chris has just said, fuel being one of the biggest challenges for drivers, because obviously we don't want to make them out of pocket. But if that's the case, what is the reason that we're not applying just a straightforward 3 to 4% percentage increase across the mileage instead, which then would be a lot fairer, and then potentially could even, whether it left the drop, whether you did a small increase on the drop or whether you did just it on the mileage to put it in, which obviously, and what would be the working on that one. I'm also concerned because I don't recall seeing any notification to myself as a councillor about the consultation, and also I don't believe we got the consultation in the paperwork with the responses.
The consultation hasn't gone out yet. We haven't done the consultation. So it's for this committee to agree for the consultation to take place. Sorry, that was the recommendation. So obviously all of these comments will be fed back during the consultation, and then for it to be reviewed if any amendments need to be made to the tariff before it goes to Cabinet for its final agreement.
So the other question is about why this particular option, not a percentage increase?
Because this is what the trade asked for as an interim measure. And they said that this would actually be the most effective and cost effective for them to gain back the money that they've lost from we do talk a lot about petrol. Actually, the main impact is the insurance. So they don't have insurance on their cars like we have. They have to have special insurance for hire and reward, which is vastly more expensive because obviously they carry members of the public.
Thanks, Stacey. So what we don't have in the report as well is an impact assessment, and I'd be interested to see what the sort of equality impact assessment would be on this and how we impact various different groups as far as equality goes.
So that has been done and reviewed by our equality impact assessment, and I can send it to Phil to share with the councillors. That's not a problem at all.
Mike?
Yeah, I understand the concern about the...
Then that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
No, you can.
No, go on, you got
Okay, thank you. Just for a clarification, as per this index, for the basic, it will be 7% increment. If it is 1 mile, if it is 5%. If it is 10 miles, it will be 1%. So whatever may be the percentage, in practical, basically the passenger need to pay 30%, 30p extra for every trip, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so all the discussion is all about increment of 30 pence per trip.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mike and then Kevin?
Yes, I understand the concern perhaps about this 30p. What do you call it? The drop business, but within the town area, which are fairly short journeys, if you start to increase, if you try to balance it with distance, then people who live in Tadley, for instance, or Evingar, who are miles and miles away, their increase will be proportionally quite a lot more. I think 30p on a taxi journey Hackney carriage journey is quite a reasonable amount of money to be paying on a journey. I prefer it that way than to be proportionately put onto a distance whereby if you live on the outskirts of Basingstoke-on-Deane, it would affect you a lot more.
Thank you. Kevin?
Thank you, Jen. In terms of impact assessment, do you do any modelling of the income of an average Hackney carriage, so that you can actually see what is the impact of increasing the overhead charge, as in the drop zone, the drop charge, compared to increasing the mileage charge, which is like a revenue cost, so to speak, so that it's numerically easy to see what that impact is for the driver's income. That would need to be compared, obviously, with the impact statement on residents, particularly, perhaps disabled residents or whatever, and have an impact assessment on both sides of the equation, so to speak.
Yes, some of the trade have shared their income with us. Obviously, that is confidential because it's their private income, and we have looked at that and the changes over time that have occurred. And they also have shared with us the costs of maintenance insurance and the different bits that we have mentioned in the paper. So that's where some of that comes from. And when I wrote the quality impact assessment, that was taken into account. From the other side, obviously there's a whole section in the quality impact assessment about disabled people and people being disadvantaged. That wasn't done from a financial perspective, but it was done from a holistic view of the fact that they should be able to access transport in the same way that everybody else should.
Johnny.
Thank you, Chair. I think we're actually missing a piece of information from the Appendix 1, which would explain, how this is going to affect the drivers themselves, in what proportion of these drops, how many they get, because if they are doing 100% of 1 mile, then 30p is going to be a huge increase for them. Whereas if 30p on the 24 pounds is not going to be very much. So it would be really interesting to see how many of the various drops they do, to see how much it will affect their income. And I'm very much with Councillor Bound on this. That I do think that the drivers do a service, and they do deliver people safely. The infrastructure is there sometimes, but we need more buses, etc. But it is 30p, and if we don't give them 30p, then they might all disappear, and that would be much worse than us not being able to give them the money. So it would be really interesting to see how many of the journeys per. I don't know if I'm explaining myself very well. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, thank you.
That's not information that I have to hand, but that is something that I could get from the trade to work out the percentage of before it goes out for the consultation, and share that with the councillors.
Jay? Oh, beg pardon, Jackie?
Thank you, Chair. Looking at what I'd like to see from this, because obviously we haven't really got, as has already been stated, a sort of an idea of what the maths behind it is, and the different impacts, the number of trips. So it's things about the different times of the day, the number of trips and distance, which I think is what Johnny's getting at. So we had to understand the proportions of what this actually, how the impact would be, and also that would also feed into an equality impact assessment if you've got the stats behind it. So it's not about how much drivers will be earning themselves, but actually the number of trips and the distance of those trips and what the proportion is. There's also another, apart from thinking about whether the split is, and I agree with what Mike said, about this, 30p isn't a lot, but if it was only 15p and some of it went on the fuel cost on the mileage, that potentially may well even it out. But without seeing the figures as to how many people this impacts, it's difficult to know. But there is another angle on this, which I don't know if it is done anywhere or whether we could look at, is the idea of the sort of like we do with buses and rail, which is peak and off-peak. So where people are using it for essential services like shopping, going to the doctor's, hospital, which would be during the day, for example, they would potentially could be cheaper without wanting to damage the nighttime economy. Then if people are using taxis more for the social events, like you said, that coming back from a trip in London, for example, so later at night, whether there's any room for manoeuvre there that could also impact it. So what I'd like to see really is kind of some meat behind this to understand the different scenarios, rather than just say this is the drivers have asked us for 30p because they think that will be easy. That's how we can just add 30p to our meters and it's job done. Because if I recall, I think that is the reason why they will go that way. But if we looked at it, and I appreciate what you say about LGR, but 18 months is still quite a long time, and it's certainly a very long time when you've got to make a shopping trip each week. So you're thinking about it from that perspective. I think we do need to look at this, even though we've got LGR around the corner, and make sure we try and get this right, because we are quite high in that table, and we have got a lot of people who are quite disadvantaged in this borough, who may well be using this service.
So in Appendix 1, Tariff 1 is daytime, Tariff 2 is our nighttime economy, and Tariff 3 is special holidays. So we've already slightly divided it up for the impact of, like, people want a taxi on Christmas Day, but to drive on Christmas Day you then have to leave your family, which is obviously, well, there's a vast difference between Tariff 3 and Tariff 1, which is the everyday tariff.
Sorry, but there's still just the 30p. That's what I'm saying, is if they need to, although I know it's based on fuel and insurance and that's a standard overhead, but if we wanted to look at a way of making sure that their income is coming in, and again, it depends on the volumes we're talking here, those ones could be slightly higher, for example. So I appreciate there is already a higher base rate, but the increase is still only 30p across all of them.
Jay.
Thank you, Chair. I think the impact of this 30p is well articulated about it, whether it's a tiny impact for someone or it's a huge impact for someone regularly. But the concern I have is when we are 59th in the 341 list, there are almost 280 authorities charged less than us. 100 of them has an increase since 2022. 50 of them has an increase since 2023. 50 of them has an increase since 2024. But we've had an increase January 2025. So almost 200 authorities hasn't had any increase, but we already had one increase in January 2025. Now, because the trade is asking 18 months later, we are proposing or discussing an increase for another 30p. I don't think it's fair on our residents. It's my perspective, because there are almost 80% of the authorities charge less, and 100 of them hasn't increased since 2022, and 50 since 2023, and 50 since 2024. I don't think it's appropriate to give that liberty to trade and say, okay, you just request whenever you want, we'll be giving up. I don't think it's the right time to look into it. I think we should be revisiting at some point next year, or in the new world of unitary authority. It's simply because where we put ourselves among the rest. Even in the south, Southampton had increased in 2023 and around our level, by putting ourselves another 30p up. So even in the region, we're going to be one of the top. So I don't think it's appropriate time to go out to consult, in my perspective.
Okay, so we have to. So if a request is made, we have to go out to consultation. We do not have to approve, as a council, the final tariff after that consultation if we do not agree that it's in the best for our constituents within Basingstoke and Deane. So if someone asks for an increase, we go out under Section 65, and it's during those 14 days that the trade, councillors, the public and different people can then come back. From that information that we receive, then a decision can be made for the paper that then goes to Cabinet, whether Cabinet wish to approve this or do you not think it's in the best interests of Basingstoke and Dean?
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments, Kevin?
Thanks, Chair. If it's a consultation, would it not be more valuable to ask a question in that consultation that seeks feedback on whether costs should be increased as an overhead on the drop or costs should be increased on the mileage? So that there's more feedback in terms of the pros and cons of those two approaches. Albeit with Jay's point about eventually after the consultation, it will still need a decision in terms of whether to place it or not.
So it's called a consultation, but it's not a consultation in the same way that we do other things. So all you can present in this consultation is what the request is. So we present that. We can't ask a number of questions because even though it's called a consultation in the legislation, it's actually just a statutory period that we share this information for people to comment on. It's confusing because it's called a consultation, but it's not a consultation in the way that we would do with any of our other stuff because it's licensing, so it doesn't make any sense.
Okay, I understand that difference now. So does that mean the request could just be rejected and not go out to consultation?
So obviously the recommendation here is for you guys to vote to whether it goes to consultation or whether it doesn't go to consultation.
Yep.
Do we have a statutory requirement to go out to consult anyway?
If you approve the consultation, otherwise a paper goes to Cabinet to say that you didn't approve the consultation, and then Cabinet make a decision whether we start again or not.
You would like to propose a motion? Yeah?
So I think I would like to propose a motion to the fellow committee to recommend Cabinet not to go out to consultation at the moment because I feel it's not the right appropriate time. It's simply because we've had an increase in January 2025 and we probably may have to wait for another considerable period until there's another request from the trade or give a certain period decided by the officers.
Thank you. I'll speak, if I may, Jackie, and then I'll let you come in. I've been very quiet so far, with my memory leaking out my ears. I think I understand where you're coming from, Councillor Ganesh. I think we have to, above all, look out for our residents who are struggling with the cost of living, which of course, as we've noted, does include our Hackney drivers, and those people will not be served either if they have no drivers left because they've been priced out of the business. I think I would be reluctant to decide to vote for a motion to not go to consultation. I think either way, what we're asking is what do we in this room feel about this? And then at some point, it's going to end up in front of Cabinet. Either way, Cabinet, we don't have any decision-making powers in this in a statutory sense. We're here to sort of, advise. Obviously, this is a meeting that, in fact, we didn't necessarily have to have. I took the decision that I wanted to hear everyone's voices, and that's why we're here on an extra Tuesday, and you've been very, very kind to show up. So I think all of these comments will get fed forward, and I would rather that it did go out to consultation so that people have the opportunity, including those members of the public who may be, struggling to pay for that extra 30p, to put their voices in, and then Cabinet can take Cabinet can take all of that information under their sort of, advisement when they make a decision on this. That's not to say that we shouldn't have the motion. That's just how I feel about it. Jackie?
Yeah, I think from what Emma said earlier, it sounds like residents won't be having a say on anything. It's just, it's a bit like a planning thing stuck on a lamppost type, you know, and it's basically an announcement. And then it's whether or not we allow that to go out to say this is what's happening. So Emma can probably correct me on that one. But the other thing I was going to suggest, I do think we ought to be looking at this, but I would like to propose that this goes back to the trade and asks them to consider, because we don't want to penalise the drivers, but we want to make sure we get the right balance. And unfortunately, it's very difficult looking at this paper, as I said earlier, you know, without having the stats and understanding exactly what the impact would be. You see, this 30p could be giving taxi drivers, you know, at least a 7% increase, or it might actually just average out because of the number of trips they do at about 3%, which then you'd think, well, okay, that as Mike was saying, that's fair enough, you know, and it's difficult for residents to pick up on it, but, you know, and where's the balance? So I think I think there's a lot of questions coming out of this, and I think that needs discussion with the trade.
Just to quickly about the public seeing it, it does go in a local newspaper as per the centuries-old legislation. We also work with the comms team through the website and through comms to promote it as much as possible on our social media sites.
So yes, it is socialised.
Yeah, so it will be in the public domain.
It's not an interactive.
So we've got a couple of different, Kevin?
Yeah, sorry, just a supplemental. So does that consultation fee, if it goes out to consultation, will any feedback come back to this committee, or will the feedback go back to you to create a report for Cabinet?
It will come back to me to create a report for Cabinet to make their decision. But it can obviously be shared with the licensing committee as well, the feedback that we get.
Were there any other comments? Christina?
I suppose there is a real danger that we will lose Hackney carriages drivers. I mean, this is their income. Do we know what the percentage is of, have drivers spoken to you about how many we may lose? Because then we'll be relying on private hire taxis, and they can, as you said, put whatever price they want. Is there a risk of losing a lot of these Hackney carriages?
The Hackney carriage trade has been in decline for the last 20 years. It isn't the modern beast that the private hire model is. We are lucky within Basingstoke and Dean that within our policy we make sure that our vehicles are WAVs. Not every local authority does that. They use saloon vehicles for their Hackney carriages, so they're no different to the private hire vehicles. Are we likely to lose some people because we don't put this up? That's something that I can't answer. Are Hackney carriage drivers an ageing population? Yes. Are we going to have some natural wastage over the next few years anyway? Yes. Are our new drivers coming in becoming Hackney carriage? No. They're becoming private hire, and our private hire sector within Basingstoke and Dean is huge.
Were there any other comments before we turn to the business of any proposals that have been made? Jackie, just to clarify, was there something that you were actively proposing? Because
Yeah, I think I'd like to go. I think I'd like this to be taken back to the trade to get under the skin of why it is just the blanket 30p. I do have a strong suspicion it's because of the technicality of how their machines work. So I think, Emma, because I'm sure this is what Rob said in the past.
Emma, can I clarify with you if that's something that is possible within the sort of statutory ticking time bomb of the process that is going on right now? I don't know if that's even possible.
Yeah, we have time to go back to Cabinet. Isn't until September, so it will be August that the pre-cabinet meeting is where the report needs to be prepared for. So yeah, we will have time to go back to the trade.
Okay.
They're usually very responsive on things that they like.
Well, Jay's proposal was first, I believe, and you wanted to. Could you clarify with the sort of the wording there that you wanted to sort of propose?
I'm happy to take that proposal back and second Jackie's proposal, because the issue that the concern I had was the 30p and the timing. So the timing, if this can be looked into at some point later, again, it'll be coming back to Cabinet to make the decision. So the ultimate decision to whether to give another uplift and 18 months later, if Cabinet thinks that's probably appropriate, and then it's down to Cabinet to make the decision. We can only recommend or express our views. I think we have expressed enough today about how we feel, or how quicker that we are looking into the uplift comparing to other authorities. So I'm happy to take my motion back and second Councillor Dustin's motion.
Okay, well, I don't see that there's, and there doesn't seem to be any sort of logistical problem with going back to the trade and querying that and then feeding that forward, the response to that forward to Cabinet with all of the other information, of course, and that will include all of the comments that have been made here tonight, as well as any responses that come into the consultation as well. I don't think we necessarily need to have a formal vote on that if everyone's happy, or does anyone have any sort of dissenting opinion on that? No? Okay. Well, if everyone's sort of happy with that little proviso, then I quickly can summarise the notes that I have made. I'm sure Phil's captured everything. Obviously, there's the thing that we've just said there, but there were otherwise queries about whether the same process was used as with previous uplifts, and the rationale for the drop uplift rather than the a split between the drop and the meter. Processes for standardising with LGR. There's been expressed concerns about disenfranchising families and disabled people in particular, a question about engagement with disability groups, the EIA, which Emma has kindly agreed to share with all of us, and points about the longer distance journeys impacting outlier villages more if the metered number was to be uplifted instead, and an assessment of the income impact for the Hackney drivers, and data on the percentage of journeys that are shorter versus longer, so we can get a feel for that, and whether there's any room for manoeuvre on uplifts on peak versus off peak. And I think that was about the size of it. Did anyone have anything that I haven't included? Or okay, on that basis then, does the committee agree that it has considered the proposed Hackney carriage fare table and agree that the proposed Hackney carriage fare table is put out to public consultation for a minimum of period of 14 days, and that the consultation be undertaken in accordance with Section 65 of the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1976, and to note that the Hackney carriage fare table will be referred to Cabinet for approval following consultation? Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. So then we're on to item 6, and a review of the work programme. Emma, if you would like to talk about that.
Which I haven't done because we did it quite extensively only a couple of weeks ago.
So it doesn't sound like it's changed very much. Has anyone got any comments on the work programme? No, okay. I only have one other tiny kind of AOB note, which is that there are a couple of people who haven't completed the licensing training yet, I'm told. So we do need to make sure that if any of you haven't completed that yet, that we do complete that. It is a statutory obligation under our constitution to be on this committee and do this work. So if you can make sure that you get back to Emma on any training dates, that would be great. Thank you very much. And that is about the size of it. My clock is wrong. What time is it? 7:19. Thank you very much and good evening.